Hi everyone, this is Mike Moran, co-founder and executive advisor at M&A Healthcare Advisors, and in today's video we are going to cover a very important but also unfortunate occurrence in our industry, and that is why sometimes deals fall apart throughout the sales process. I plan on covering 4 quantitative and 4 qualitative reasons, some of which are very straightforward, others I think will really surprise you, but as always, the goal with putting out any of this media and content is to better prepare you for the process of selling your business. Quantitative reason number 1, declining financial metrics. Now, the first bit of advice we give our clients prior to entering the market is to ensure that the status quo and day-to-day is maintained throughout the 6 to 8 months of our relationship, especially from a financial standpoint. Now, I'm referring to revenue, market share, census, right? Profitability, because all of these financial metrics have a direct tie to the value of your company. And the last thing we want to do is draw buyers that are going to underbid, or just as importantly, getting under contract and getting into due diligence and giving a buyer a reason to potentially reduce the price or walk away from the deal entirely. So, like I said, the status quo, maintaining it is very, very important. Although in the perfect scenario, even if it's slightly, your company grows throughout those 6 to 8 months. Okay, so quantitative reason number 2, not disclosing legal issues. Now, we always advocate for full transparency, right? So transparency helps build trust, initially with us as your advocate and partner, secondly and inevitably with a buyer who is looking at acquiring your company. And look, the reality is sometimes there's unflattering information out there about your businesses. You may have some weaknesses, and I'm certainly not saying that we lead in the marketing process, right, with disclosing potential legal issues or weaknesses of your company. In fact, I'm not saying that at all, but it's important before going to market that we get a sense of any legal claims, historically speaking, that may have been resolved, or more importantly, pending claims that may be on the company, right? And at the end of the day, we're doing this to ensure that there's not going to be a greater impasse down the line, especially when we get into due diligence, because a big part of due diligence is looking through the legal aspect of your company, essentially from when you formed. In fact, I was working with a client that had a query ongoing from the OIG, and the key there was understanding the situation at the right time, letting the buyer in on the situation, and collaboratively working together to get beyond it and essentially getting the company sold, which in fact we did. So again, transparency is pivotal, especially from a legal standpoint, and it's important we get in front of all that information up front rather than being surprised in due diligence. Quantitative reason number 3, signing a boilerplate letter of intent. Now look, the reality is a letter of intent is usually non-binding in nature, excluding a few components. But the reality is we want this LOI to be robust in nature because it really should serve as a template for the purchase agreement. And whatever provisions we can negotiate up front is going to save us a heck of a lot of time on the back end and also help us avoid any potential impasses. So components like legal and representations and warranties and what those survival periods look like. Employment, right? I'm not saying we negotiate an employment agreement during the LOI, but we certainly want to get a sense of what your role might be post-acquisition. Things like holdbacks. If the purchase price contains a seller note, what is the vesting period for that seller note? What are some other important milestones, right? What is the timing to close, right? Who's conducting the quality of earnings? Who's conducting legal diligence? This is all information we'd like to know up front. Is essentially responsibility of your intermediary to require all of this information in the letter of intent. Like I said, the more we can get ahead of, the more we can negotiate up front, the more seamless it's going to be. It's also going to help us avoid potential impasses that might have been unavoidable in due diligence. Okay, so our 4th and final quantitative reason as to why sometimes deals fall apart during the sale process is very straightforward, and that is a lapse in time. And look, I'll sound very cliche, but the reality is time can kill a deal. I've seen it happen. So it's very, very important that within the LOI, you spell out specific milestones. You leave a reasonable amount of time to achieve these milestones. And then once in due diligence, you live up to that expectation. You're communicative, you're available, you're showing an interest to consummate the transaction. And in part, you're relying on your intermediary to facilitate all this communication. So it's important that he or she are also very involved throughout the due diligence process. But point being, you want to be available, you want to be communicative, you want to build that trust, like I said, and in doing so is a sure way to raise the probability of your company being sold. Let me take a second to thank everyone who listened. I will follow this up with 4 qualitative reasons as to why sometimes deals fall apart during the sale process. Thanks, everyone.